When I was prepping for my marathon, I watched a lot of videos to help streamline that prep, but the most useful advice I got wasn't necessarily in the most viewed content. Now, that's not to say to disregard mainstream advice. That mainstream advice is really helpful and really applicable, but being a beginner, there were questions I didn't even think to ask, and so I wanted to put this together for anyone else in the same position to share those bits of advice that ended up making the most difference. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Tom, and I've just run a 3:28 marathon my first time around. A lot of these videos are going to be from more seasoned runners offering more holistic advice, but what I've found as a beginner is that there are certain aspects that they overlook just because it comes like second nature to them. And so I wanted to give this account from a beginner's perspective to touch on some of those aspects. As you guessed, preparation is everything here, and I'm going to break that prep down into 4 key areas: your plan, strength training, diet, and mentality. Starting with your plan, if you are completely new into marathon training like myself, having an app or a solution like Runner that will do a lot of that progressive overload and that scheduling for you takes a huge amount of weight off your shoulders. All I had to do to set Runner up was set in some of my best efforts previously, which days I wanted to run and how long I wanted that plan to be. And then Runner took care of everything else. It sorted out all the runs on the days that I'd like, put all the pacings together, all the tempos, all the intervals, along with, which is really useful, some estimated times for how long it would take me to complete them based off its projections. All you have to do is lace up your shoes and follow it. Speaking of shoes, these are going to be really important. So if you don't have a pair of dedicated running shoes, I really implore you to go and get some. Reason being is because these are going to provide a lot more support for your shoe than the usual trainers that you use. And due to the mileage that you're going to be putting in, it's definitely recommended to go and get a gait analysis to find out which shoe is best for you. I recommend Runner's Need, or basically any running shop that will record you running on the treadmill and then show you that film. Reason being is when they make the recommendations for the shoe, I trust their decision a lot more because they can walk me through what they're seeing. Definitely worth doing. Now, I didn't plan my runs, I just sort of set off and figured it out as I went along, but if you want a little bit more peace of mind as to where you're running and how far for, I know that Strava has a feature where you can plan your routes. The only thing I'm not sure of is whether that's a premium feature or a free one, so definitely check that out. Speaking of features, another key one of Runner that was really useful for me was the holiday feature. And that's where you can either pause your plan entirely or decrease the load for a specific period of time. So I went to Italy for 10 days during my training block, and for those 10 days, I just set holiday mode on, paused my running, and then I was able to enjoy the holiday without having to worry about getting those runs in. On to the second area, which is going to be strength, an area that I think is quite underlooked when it comes to marathon prep, but it will definitely help protect you from injury. The only sort of changes that I made to my workout routine was I included a lot more compound exercises, so squats, squat variations, RDLs, and good mornings, just to make sure I was hitting multiple muscles with the same exercise, as well as training those stabilizing muscles that are going to keep my joints really healthy. I also dropped the number of reps I was doing to around 5 reps per set. So I was really maximizing the strength training I could do without going too low on the number of reps to incite injury. Don't forget to train your muscles below the knee either. I did my calf raises maybe once or twice a week alongside tib raises. Now the tib is this muscle here, and for the majority of gym goers, it does go unnoticed and untrained, but it's really going to help with protecting you against shin splints. And those tib raises are pretty easy to do. All you've got to do is find a wall to lean against, keep your back flat against that wall, and then focus on squeezing your tibs as you keep your heels on the ground, but raise your toes as high as you can. I like sets of around 10 to 12 here, or however many you can do comfortably. Now, I've been in the gym for over 10 years at this point, and one of the most unwelcome changes from this marathon plan was that my weights dipped, and I wasn't able to lift as much weight as I was previously. After speaking to a few people, this is absolutely normal. The amount of stress that your legs are going to be under mean that you just can't lift the weight you could before. You're also going to have to get used to going to the gym a little bit less frequently just to fit those runs in. So I dropped the number of times a week I was going to the gym to around 2 or 3. And that's where full body training really came in useful, because it meant I wasn't negating any muscle groups despite this. I definitely wouldn't negate any part of that strength training. And if you have questions around how to fit that in alongside the running, I would really recommend looking at Nick Bare's Marathon Prep. It goes into a lot of detail around that interlock between strength training and also the running, and it answered a lot of questions that I had, particularly as a beginner. Area number 3 is going to be nutrition. You want to make sure that you are fueling your body with the right sorts of foods because you're going to be putting it through a tremendous amount of work. Now, I always recommend having a diet that is full of whole and natural foods. Reason being is because you're going to be getting a lot of benefit from the additional vitamins and minerals that natural food sources bring. One recommendation that I will give is to focus, especially in that prep phase, on high quality protein sources due to protein's role of growing and repairing strained muscle. The amount of stress that you're going to put your legs under, making sure that that protein is there is going to be really, really valuable. Another area where you're going to deviate a little bit from that diet is when you have to carb load. I've got a different video that goes into carb loading in a lot more detail. I'll link that down below. But in essence, what you're going to want to do is start that carb loading around 3 days before your big run. So my big run was on Saturday. I started carb loading on Thursday. I definitely didn't do this in the traditional manner. I just added those carbs on top of my usual diet. Worked for me. Don't know if that's worked for other people. The mainstream way to do it is to swap out, parts of your normal meals for extra carbohydrates. So swap out maybe a little bit of protein, some veggies for those carbs, making sure that your glycogen stores are going to be as full as they can and you've got all that energy for that long run. This can also include swapping out snacks like fruit for bagels or toast. Bagels were a favorite of mine during this carb loading period, but I also focused on pasta and oats, as these are going to be rich in carbohydrates and are really going to help with that sustained energy during that run. And then on to the final point, which is going to be mentality. This plan is going to take a lot of time, especially with that strength training involved as well. It's a really big commitment and you need to make sure you're there mentally. Now, there were certain days where I didn't really want to get up, didn't want to lace up my shoes, and it is difficult, especially when you've had a really high volume training week. But what I found was if I got those first 2 or 3 kilometers under my belt, then the rest of the run really wasn't that difficult. So I just had to get past that first initial barrier. Now, of course, there were days where I did skip the run entirely, and looking back, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. In the moment, you just have to be honest, you're undergoing a lot. Missing that run, if your body really can't do it, isn't going to make the slightest bit of difference to your end time as long as you make the runs after that. The key thing is to be honest with yourself around what you want from this prep. For me, I wanted to have a sub 3:30 marathon, and for that, I knew I was going to have to show up for the vast majority, if not all of these runs. And so when it got difficult and when I didn't feel like I wanted to run, I had that time in mind. If you don't have a time in mind and you're just going to try and complete the race, maybe you don't have to train as hard. You could be a little bit more relaxed, but that's a personal decision. Just make sure that you are aligned mentally with what you're trying to do. The key to a successful plan is, of course, commitment. This is going to be a very busy few weeks, not just of the running, but of recovery and of sleeping as well. Making sure that you are aware of that commitment is going to determine your level of success. It's likely there are going to be more people running this race alongside you. I'd be very surprised if you were doing this on your own. And so this next bit of advice is for after that starting pistol goes. It's likely you won't be right at the start of your wave. And so when you hear that starting pistol, don't start your watch right away. Start it when the people in front of you start running. Reason being is because it's going to take a little bit of time for that wave to actually get moving. And if you start your watch when the starting pistol goes, you'll still be standing still. Now, this is going to mean there might be a little bit of difference between the chip time, if that goes off when the starting pistol goes, and your watch time, but your watch is going to give a much better indication of the total time that you've spent moving. For example, my chip time was about 10 minutes slower than my watch time, purely because I was at the back of my wave, and by the time I'd started my watch, 10 minutes had passed since that starting pistol. Also, as this is presumably your first race as well, you might be in the wrong pacing group, purely because the race organizers don't have a previous time to go off, and so you might be allocated a group that's slower than what you want to do. That was exactly the same case for me. The pacing group I was in was a lot slower than what I wanted to get to, so the bit of advice I was given next was actually on the start line. If you want to overtake around the outside. It's a lot easier than trying to weave your way through the middle, and if you're definitely going to take that approach, make sure you look out for potholes. I didn't step any, but I did see some round the side that could have meant the end of my race if I stepped in one. I am hoping that you've prepped whatever fuel you might need, maybe in the form of those electrolyte gels. That being the case, if you do pass these refreshment stations, I would definitely take advantage of them. I wouldn't stick to the water. If there's any isotonic sports drink on offer, I would 100% recommend that just to get those extra electrolytes in. Don't make the same mistake I made. I tried to drink directly from the cup as I was running. Didn't really go to plan. I've been told to pinch the middle of the cup so that when you're running, the area the water can go through is a lot smaller and you're spilling a lot less so you can run as you drink. And if you're doing this as part of a runner or a Garmin plan, you will no doubt have that plan synced to your watch. One thing that I did that I would not recommend was set that runoff from the plan so it was already loaded into my watch, because what this means is that you're going to have those pacings already set for you. And if you're a little bit slow, if you get to, maybe that 30, 35K mark and you don't have as much gas in the tank, you're going to get reminded when you fall below those pacings. You're going to get a little jolt. You're going to be told that you're going too slow. Not great for the mentality. So I would just record it as a normal run. You can still see your pacings, it will sync to everything afterwards, but you won't get that little jolt when you're slowing down a little bit. Speaking of that 30-35k mark, no matter how hard you've prepared, you will no doubt hit that wall. For me, it was 30k in, and what this meant was I had a real dip in pace and my legs really started seizing up. Luckily for me, there was a fellow called Mateusz who was running pretty much alongside me for the majority of that race. And so to take my mind off the fatigue that my legs were feeling, I just tried to keep up with him, a sort of mini mental competition. That really helped take my mind off my legs for a few kilometers. When you do hit that wall, it's really important to pay attention to how your muscles feel. Yes, they're going to feel tired, but if you do have to slow down to a walk just to stretch out your hamstrings a little bit, do so for a little part. The key thing here is to have something mentally that's going to keep you going. Because if you slow down, it's a lot easier to slow down for the entire race or to quit entirely. So have that thing in your mind that's going to keep you motivated towards that finish line. So this part is only going to cover the immediate aftermath of the race, which for me was the most important because it was when I was feeling my most uncomfortable. Now, when I crossed that finish line, the immediate feeling that I had alongside the cramp was that my nose and sort of like the front two teeth of mine started tingling. Looking back on that now is definitely a sign that I was lacking these electrolytes. I've been running for 3.5 hours. I would recommend, even if you don't have to take a drink, you're not really feeling thirsty, forcing some electrolytes down, whether that's, sports drink they've got at the event or some pre-prepared electrolytes, 100% recommend doing this. Is really going to help with that initial recovery. One thing I didn't do that I wish I did was just have something to eat when you finish that race. It can be something small. All you have to do is kind of stave off that hunger. I don't really feel hungry after my long runs, but I wish I had sort of a protein bar, something like that, keeping me satiated before my proper meal. The reason I say that is because when that hunger sets in, you're likely going to be feeling very fatigued. So this was after I got home, after I showered, and when I was having my nap, I started feeling really, really hungry. Woke up from that nap, legs were feeling dead, and it was quite difficult for me to then get out of bed. I would recommend doing this all the way around, having a little bit to eat first, and then going for a nap. Now, talking on that shower, one thing that I did that really did help was I focused on cold and hot bursts. So I did a cold burst for a couple minutes, then a hot burst. The cold to really chip away at that inflammation and muscle soreness, the hot to relax the muscle, and this combination worked really well, albeit a short-term solution, but when your legs are in that state, anything helps. Now, after that nap, before that nap, whenever you want to get something to eat, I would recommend going back to your original diet as soon as possible. So focus on those proteins, making sure that you're getting enough in that's going to help your muscle recover. Focus on getting those greens in, that fiber, and those carbohydrates as well, because you'll be rocking with a serious calorie deficit. However, most importantly, do not try and recover too quickly. Your body is not just in a state of tightness, your muscles are damaged. It will take them time to repair. Don't try and rush back into running. I had an initial idea that I was going to go for a shakeout run the morning after. Didn't do that. It was very difficult for me to move properly. I think take the time that you need to recover. I did my first run a week and a bit after I got back. Even that was fairly slow. This is one of those things where you just have to leave and let time do the work. You have to trust the process. So there you go. Hopefully a few more ideas brought to the table on how to approach your first race. If you are looking for something a little bit more in depth than what I've just gone through, I would 100% recommend Nick Bare's marathon playlist. I will link that down below. It's what helped me for the majority of my prep phase. But until then, best of luck with the prep. You'll crush that race, and I'll catch you next time.